Market to Market is everywhere you are. Subscribe to Market on YouTube, find us on the PBS video app to stream on demand, and add our 3 podcasts on your favorite podcasting app.
This is the Friday, April 23rd, 2021 version of the Market Plus segment. Joining us now, Mark Gold. And Mark, leave it to me to ask a ridiculously long question with only 30 seconds to go. And I was asking at the end of the main program about when the mainstream press starts picking up stories of high prices, and you know it's coming, that's your time to sell. But there's something different this time, at least the way I see things. Maybe you see some things differently. The story is different of, you talk about there's just not much to carry out. A cure for high prices right now, there's going to be nothing to sell at some point.
You know, that's the issue out here. How do we ration the demand? We're going to have to ration it with price. So even if we see these stories about, you know, grain farmers dying in the dust and prices going to the moon, and we have record low carryouts, is that going to be the signal this year? It always has been. But this is a different year. And if we don't have, like we've been saying, we've got to have above trend line production, but we could bring more acres into this thing. I believe the intentions report is at least 3 million off, 2 million, at least 2 million off in corn and at least 1 million off in beans. Assuming we can get it all on the ground, which I have no reason to think we can't, becomes a yield issue. But again, we just can't lose any yield. And could things get explosive? With these funds, with these expanded position limits, you know, they've got a lot of money to push this thing around if they want to. The question is, what will happen when they want to get out of it? But in the meantime, you know, the old story around the Board of Trade was, if you were in the middle of a bull market and you got into a cab and the cab driver asked you, hey, what are the beans doing? You knew it was time to get out, because by the time the cab drivers heard about it, you know, it was over. But the fact of the matter is, this could be a different year. And even though, you know, looking at replacing $5.50 corn for new crop and $13 beans seems like a foolhardy venture. Again, is this the year we're going to really move these things dramatically higher? And some of these call spreads for 25, 30 cents are going to pay off, maybe 5 to 1, 6 to 1. It's certainly possible. So what's wrong with selling $5.50 corn, spend 30 cents or 25 cents? You lock in $5.25 and you still got a good $1.50 more, $2 more on the upside.
Well, that's
nothing wrong with that.
That's a little bit of a question. I'm going to get to that in a moment. You talk about the cab driver. I had 2 different people come up to me at a track meet, a high school track meet this week, asking what is going on with the grains. 2 athletic administrators. I mean, one used to be on the farm and another one was just really curious what was going on. So I'll take that as my cab driver in Iowa. How about that?
Yeah,
High school
absolutely.
Sporting event. All right. You talk about, you always kind of have talked about this for years, Mark. Jared in Mattoon, Illinois is asking us, you know, what's better for new crop right now? Buy the put and retain physical ownership of beans to capture positive basis, or sell the grain and buy a call?
Well, some of the basis levels have run to incredible levels. So if you've got that kind of situation and they're paying 90 over for beans or 30 or 40, 50 over for corn, there's nothing wrong with selling that grain and buying the call option. If you're worried about drought or anything else, you don't want to get caught in that and get too aggressive on sales, then you've got to buy the puts. There's just no 2 ways around it. You know, along with, this has got to be the year where we have perfect production. This is also the year that with these position limits and the price limits expanded, we can take a $1.50 away from this corn market in a heartbeat, and $2.50 to $3.50 away from the bean market in a heartbeat. And don't tell me it can't happen, because I'm here to tell you the markets can and will do whatever they want to do. And you just can't sit there and go, oh, Lord, I missed another unbelievable opportunity out here. There's nothing I know of that's going to have you sell the high of the market. And it's not going to be perfect. You're not going to wind up, if beans go to $20, you're not going to get a net $20 for your beans. If corn goes to $10, you're not going to get $10. But can you settle for 70% of that? I hope you can. So that's the way we look at it. We want to manage the risk and not try to outguess these highs. But we'll ride the calls until they buck us.
You wrote about that a little bit this week, but I also want to ask you, you mentioned tight supplies. Are you hearing that only about 5% of old crop corn is still in farmer control, physical?
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Okay.
I think they've done a pretty good job of selling it out.
So there's not as much to go there. All right, I have another question, and I think this we did cover, but I just want to make sure. Matt in Amherst, Wisconsin, are the widespread dry conditions factored into the grain and beef markets at this time?
Well, certainly when you look at where the prices are, you've got to say yes. Does it get worse from here? The Dakotas look like they're going to get some rains. We've had some rains down south. We're going to get some rains here in the Midwest. Then they'll say that it's going to delay planting because of the rains. The rains don't look that heavy. They were talking about snow delaying planting. We had about 20 flakes of snow fall on Chicago the other day. That's not going to stop anybody from getting out there. The cold weather may, but again, guys may plant in the colder weather to get it in the ground. I think when it's all said and done, you plant in the dust and the bins will bust. And again, we've never seen a year where the highs are made in April, early May, that we've taken those out. Now, again, this could be the year. There's no question about it. This could be the year where we break hard in May, June, and then put the heat on the market in July and August and watch it explode. There could be a vicious down and then a vicious up again. I'm telling you, the volatility with these position limits and price limits is going to be extreme this summer. And you've got to, have your big boy pants on to get through this.
All right, so the question then is, and this one comes from Steve via Twitter, and it ties in right on. Do the markets give us a clue as to where they're going? You mentioned the past, but is there ever a sign that something's coming that we see in real time?
I've been in the markets 48 years. About 45 years ago, somebody gave me an insight on when you have a bull market in the grains. And that's usually because we have a summer drought. And there's only a few people I've ever told what that signal is, and I'm not about to tell everybody here now. But there are some signals that have been pretty reliable over the years. If we get that signal this year, it's never not worked for at least $4 in beans and $1 or so in corn. So if we get it, we're going higher.
Okay.
If we don't get it, I think we've got some risk out here.
All right, I'm going to skip ahead to the last thing that I'm going to ask you about the livestock market. And this is something I wanted to get in with feeders. But it's Cody in Minnesota. And he's asking, as corn and soybeans and hogs go up, they go, how can the corn, beans, and hogs go higher day after day and the cattle lower? Would you be better off selling the corn and just let the lot sit empty?
Well, that's not a bad question. I haven't thought about that. I hate to tell farmers not to produce. That's what you guys do. And, I'm a strong proponent of American agriculture. And I don't think ever telling guys not to produce is a good thing. Are you going to go through some tough times out here? We've got to get the slaughter rate up. Now in Nebraska, I think it's in North Platte, they're building a plant. I think it's going to be farmer owned, which will be interesting. Well, we're starting to see maybe a little bit more competition from the packers out here, which would be a good thing for these markets. But certainly if we can get the slaughter rates up, prices will come back. So, do what you need to do, put some price protection on underneath. and do what you always do. I think if you try to get cute, sell corn and not raise the cattle, your banker's not going to be happy. And you want to maintain relationships as best as you can. So if you're going to raise the cattle, just put some protection underneath it.
Well, how do you, I mean, you're talking about systematic change in the livestock market that we've seen. Trying to, when the packer's making money, they're not as interested necessarily in sharing that. I mean, that's the American way. Yeah. So competition goes away in some cases. Yeah. But, you know, is this congressional oversight? Is this hearings that have to happen? Or is there some way that the market is going to fix this?
Well, let's hope it's not Congress, because they don't have a real good record of fixing many problems out here. Let's hope it's the market. And where there's good money there, guys should be able to build more plants, and not packer plants, but farmer-owned plants, and take your own destiny into your own hands. Now, there becomes a point where you may have too many plants. But certainly right now, with demand as good as it is, we've gone through a pandemic. Demand for beef ought to be incredibly strong for years to come, barring any more pandemics. Would I want to be in the beef industry long term? I would be, because I believe the demand's going to be there. The question is, you've got to make it fair for the guy that's raising these cattle. You've got to do it and figure out a way. Because if you keep putting them out of business, you put this guy out of business, then how many more guys are out there just like it? Quite a few.
All right. Mark Gold, good to see you. Thank you for the time.
Great to see you, Paul. Thanks.
We will talk to you next time. All right.
Thanks, Paul. Bye-bye.
That's Mark Gold on our Market Plus, and next week we will look at the replanting efforts after a historic weather event, and Dan Huber will join us to break down the markets. Thank you so very much for watching. Have yourself a great week.